if you view him as a wide receiver first, hold him up to the other wide receivers in the first round. If you still think he's the best, is he worth taking that high? I don't think so. Like, I think maybe 5 or 6 is more right it, but like right there today. But it's because if you think he's gonna play 85, 90 snaps in the NFL and go both ways, then he becomes kind of a novelty to me, and I don't think you can guarantee that.
There's a lot of different ways to look at it with Travis Hunter, right? Very, very versatile player. I tend to think of it like this. I think his value as a corner alone is worth whatever pick you take him with. I think he's going to be a spectacular corner in the NFL. Like, if for me, I have less qualms about taking the corner that early because I ask myself this question: like, if the Browns had drafted Denzel Ward number 2, would we even be thinking about it? Right? Like, or if Sauce Gardner went number 1 instead of Walker, would anybody have any complaints?
No.
I think a corner is as capable of being worthwhile at that pick as anybody, especially in the class where there's nobody, like if Abdul Carter were 6'6" and 280, right?
Yeah.
And there was no dissension on whether Abdul was worth the pick or not, right? I still think there's really not a great argument for him not to go number 1 or 2 in this draft,
No,
but
I'm with you
still,
there. Yeah.
still, if Abdul Carter were Myles Garrett, because if he were 6'6", 280, he'd be Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Abdul Carter were if there was a Myles Garrett in this draft, right, or something like that, obviously, then I wouldn't be for Travis. But the thing with Travis is this: special ball skills, and if you're a team that really like Jerry Jeudy, which the Browns are, you're probably going to be very, very high on him. And what we've heard, the Browns early on in the process, like Luther Burton, right? Very yards at the catch guy. Travis Hunter is a better yards at the catch guy than Luther Burton, in my opinion. More electric than he is. He's the best yards at the catch guy in this draft class to me. And I can see them saying to themselves, look, if we draft this guy, and I think this is the underrated security of Travis Hunter. If you draft this guy, you feel like you're drafting a guy who could potentially be the best wide receiver in this class or the best corner or some mix of both where you get double value out of him and you're getting slot receiver production and number 2 cornerback from him, right? Like if you're able to get that out of him, then you feel like I got 2 players with this pick. Or you can say to yourself, okay, we'll try him out at corner. If it doesn't work out at corner, we can we can play him at wide receiver. Right? So that feels like bus protection to them, where it's where it's okay, well,
protection part of it, but the two-way part of it, I can't buy into until I see somebody do it. I just feel like it's too hard in the NFL.
That's true. And I brought up this analogy with the Cavs. People are not creative, right? In general, people. When Steve Jobs brought out the iPhone, all Steve Ballmer could do was talk about how it doesn't have a keyboard. Right? How's that going to work? Nobody's ever going to want to use that every day. And now we're using this every day. Right. So maybe for me, I just look at it sure, I don't think he's going to be able to do 2 ways in the NFL, but there might be a version of it that works. And if there's a single player that could make that work in the NFL, I do think it's him because what he's special at wide receiver is not the stuff that requires him to be extremely skilled on the other side of the ball, right? This is stuff where he could be very good at running underneath, right? Maybe doing a little bit of that, maybe being an underneath man on mesh, running some deep routes, getting some 50-50 balls. If you feel like you can remember what they tried to do with Marquise Goodwin?
Yes.
If you feel like you can get that plus, right, out of him offensively, and then know that you can get a number 2 corner out of him on defense because you have Denzel Ward. So you don't need him to follow Jamar Chase, right? So it's a very different game. You're just going to ask him to play zone on the other side, which he's very, very good at. And he has incredible zone instincts. Then, you feel really good about your ability to do it. I think having Myles Garrett back also is a big deal in this conversation, right? Yeah. Because if you feel like you can get the defense off the field very quickly, which this Browns defense with Miles the last 2 years and Jim Schwartz, they've been able to get off the field. They're not on the field that long. Even this year where they had a bit of a regression, they're not on the field that long. You feel like, hey, well, he's not even going to be out there that much, right? And you feel like this is a good fit for him to be able to play both ways. Now, it might become a situation where your defense isn't as dominant anymore. You got to make a decision for a season or two. But I think his versatility is something that they see as a plus, and I would see as a plus, because it's not like he's Jabril Peppers, where Jabril was only noteworthy because he was a versatile player, right? Because Jabril could return kicks and ran, and he didn't do any of that at like a level where you would call him award-winning, but, you know, he was fun to watch. Travis Hunter's very different. I think Travis Hunter is a special cornerback prospect and the best yards at the catch wide receiver prospect in this class, the most explosive athlete in this class. So I think this is very different, where it's like, hey, he could be a pro. He could be an all-pro guy on one side. He could be a Pro Bowl guy on the other side. He could be a little bit of both and be this new unique thing that changes how we view the position. I think we're a little bit too stringent in positions, right? I'm going to also advocate for something fringe here while we're talking about Travis Hunter. Feel like punters should be more athletic, or you should get more athletic people to hold the kicks, because these fakes don't work because you're asking punters to hold. I'm like, maybe we should recruit or try to develop failed wide receivers to be punters more often, because then it gives you more variety on trick plays. That if I were a head coach, that would be my kooky project, right? I'm like, I'm gonna try and develop athletic punters and more athletic kickers, because you can't run anything off of them the way that there is. But again, anyways, my French stuff aside, I think that's the idea. That's the thinking with a guy like Travis. It's like, hey, we know, we feel very good about his own instincts. He's going to be a good corner, but we have other places we can play him, and maybe that makes us feel more secure about the selection. Whereas if Abdul Carter, if you draft him, being devil's advocate here,
work out,
and he's not able to, like, if all the size concerns, right, that people are worried about it turned out to be a real thing in the NFL for him, well, then there's nothing you can pivot to, right, other than like special teams or third down guy.
You could play linebacker, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe some stand-up linebacker, but it's not as like drastic as what you could do with Travis, where it's like, hey, well, maybe you find out that Travis isn't a shutdown corner. Maybe he needs to gain weight there, but he's so dynamic with the football in his hands that you can have him punt return and be a wide receiver, and it works out for you.
Yeah.
Let me reiterate this. I think if you draft Travis Hunter, the requirement should be for the team that drafts him is that you're willing to see what it is that he can do early on, right? Like if the Browns draft him, I don't want them to go into it thinking he's one thing or the other, right? I think that decision can be made down the line.
Yeah.
But in order to get the most out of him, you have to see what it is that he can actually do, that he wants to, and then build your plan around that.
Sure.
Right? Like how well is he going to hold up? How many snaps can he play? How often should we put him offense versus defense? Is he a guy that, like, we're very just specific about the part of the field that we play him, where it's like, hey, we're not going to really have him in goal line very much, or he's not going to be in these certain packages, right? He's not going to be in run heavy situations. He's going to be our pass heavy guy, corner. We're going to go to our nickel guy that we go to. So he's in nickel, dime, maybe some sub packages. And then he's also in, our base 11, or maybe he's just not in your base 11. Maybe he's just in your 10. How many snaps? Because you can make it so that he gets a regular amount of snaps while playing both sides of the ball.
Sure.
And just basically have him on packages on both sides. So that's the thing. You just have to have, I think, the ability, the patience to say, hey, we're gonna see what this is for his first year, what he can do, what he cannot do, and what he can get better at on both sides of the ball, and then take it from there, because the talent is there to be a impact player on both sides of the ball. And like, Brad, if you get somebody who on one end, if you need a first down on offense, you feel like you could throw the ball to Travis and he can make something happen. And then on the other end, you need to stop a third down, and you're like, hey, they're not going to, we got Denzel and Travis, so they're not going to be able to get that first down. That player is immensely valuable, right?
Yes.
So like if you get a guy who could be a playmaker on both sides of the ball, in key down situations, then yeah, you're not, that's going to be the most valuable pick in the draft outside of if somebody hits on a quarterback, which seems unlikely in the first round this year.